Nationalist fury as Mo Mowlam denies duplicity over Drumcree. The Duns Tribunal adjourns as Charles Haughey's legal team considers new evidence. And few surprises as Bertie Ahern names his junior ministerial team. Good evening and welcome to 6-1. Also on the programme this evening, the government orders a fresh inquiry into the option of putting Dublin's light rail system underground.
300 jobs are under threat at the Asahi plant in County Mayo after workers reject a redundancy package. And NASA are considering sending the former astronaut John Glenn back into space at the age of 75.
But first, the Irish and British governments meeting at Stormont Castle outside Belfast have agreed a timetable for the discussion of decommissioning paramilitary arms. It's also emerged that the SDLP leader John Hume has requested an urgent meeting with the British Prime Minister Tony Blair to discuss a leaked official document suggesting that a decision to allow the Drumcree March had been taken some time ago. Earlier, the Northern Ireland Secretary Mo Mowlam said the document was a preliminary draft. There's been angry reaction to the leak and claims that Dr Mowlam misled nationalists on the issue. The document, dated the 20th of June, says that a consensus exists among the key players, that's Dr Mowlam, the Chief Constable and the Parades Commission, that a controlled parade on the Garvaghey Road was the least worst option. It says it would be clearly wrong for the British government to disclose an early fixed position, and that the purpose of negotiations should be to establish, quote, that all sides are in the territory of finding the lowest common denominator for getting some orange feet on the Garvaghey Road.
In nationalist areas, this damaging leak has ended whatever honeymoon remained for Tony Blair's government. Politicians were today aghast at the implication that they could have been strung along by Dr Mowlam and her officials. She responded in a series of interviews this morning, saying that the paper merely set out options. So was it wrong when it claimed that 3 weeks ago she and the Chief Constable had agreed that the lesser of two evils was to put the march down the road?
Yes, I'm saying that was an unfair interpretation of my position. Civil servants write documents arguing particular cases. I'd asked for documents to say what can we do for the next 3 weeks to help move that accommodation forward. That was one particular view. I can give you others, but I assure you I did not endorse that document.
But isn't it an extraordinary thing that a document which you say unfairly portrays your position should be the exact one that's leaked?
I find it amazingly surprising, awful, and ask what the mentality and the motivation of the person who leaked it was.
You can read that yourself, and it's very clear what it says. The consensus opinion of all the advisors, including the Secretary of State, was that the solution to the problem was the problem itself, and that they decided that on the 20th of June. And they told nobody in the meantime, and didn't consult in any stage with us. We are very angry, I'm putting it very mildly.
Mr Hume expressed that anger directly to Mo Mowlam and is now also seeking a meeting with Tony Blair. After today's talks, Ray Burke too made plain the Irish government's displeasure at the weekend's events and the subsequent fallout.
I also emphasised to the Secretary of State our dismay at the document and the contents of that document. However, we have to look forward. It's been looking back has been the problem.
The government's response is deliberately low-key given the current volatile situation. At the talks themselves, delegates agreed a timetable to debate decommissioning, but there's no doubting the fact that the significance of that has been overshadowed by events on the streets.
There's been more sporadic violence in nationalist areas of the north following the RUC's decision on the Drumcree parade on Saturday. Outside Newry, masked men boarded the Dublin to Belfast train and attempted to set it on fire with petrol bombs as it stood in the station. There are bomb alerts in Belfast and Lurgan. Last night there were more hijackings and 3 orange halls were attacked with petrol bombs. The damage so far is put at over £20 million. Police in the north have also listed the numbers of incidents which occurred between Sunday evening and early this morning. There were 776 attacks against the security forces, over 1,400 petrol bombings, 363 hijackings of cars and other vehicles, and over 2,400 plastic bullets were discharged. The RUC also said 90 people were arrested.
Once again, youths in nationalist areas directed their anger against the security forces. The RUC fired plastic bullets as they came under attack from petrol bombs and missiles. Vehicles were hijacked and used to block roads. In North Belfast, loyalists living close to the peace line in Ardoyne say they were the victims of sectarian attacks. A number of houses were attacked by petrol bombs, and at one point shots were fired from the nationalist side of the fence, wounding a Protestant man in the hand. The response from loyalist paramilitaries to this and other shootings involving Republicans recently was to stage a so-called show of strength in the nearby Woodvale area. 6 gunmen, apparently under the control of the Combined Loyalist Military Command, were involved. A loyalist politician whose party has links to the UVF said he hoped Republicans wanted compromise rather than conflict.
The dangerous situation we're getting ourselves into is that people believe that the security forces can no longer protect them. And when that happens, then loyalist paramilitaries will protect those areas. And I think that that's very, very dangerous. And I think that, Republicans need to pull back from this because we have heard them talk about their opponents and about coming onto the streets. And I think that people have the right to protest, but they don't have the right to attack Protestant homes, and they don't have the right to shoot Protestants because of the Drumcree March.
There were further signs of the fragility of the CLMC ceasefire when a 28-year-old man thought to have UDA connections was killed yesterday when a small bomb of the type used by loyalist paramilitaries exploded in Dunmurry. He's been named as 28-year-old Brian Morton. Estimates of the damage caused so far by the disturbances since Saturday put the cost to the public purse at over £20 million, or the equivalent of 4 new primary schools. Business leaders who met the economy minister yesterday are worried they will lose customers because of the disruption to trade, and said political progress needed to be made to ensure economic stability.
Certainly the key actors, David Trimble and John Hume, have signalled that the economy will be top of their agenda of substantial issues. And I think there is an uncontentious issue which each of them can readily address and can offer us progress.
In Washington, the Clinton administration has said it's deeply concerned by the unrest of recent days and has urged a return to calm in Northern Ireland. But a US State Department spokesman refused to criticise the British government's decision to allow the Orange Parade through the Garvaghey Road. Meanwhile, the American media has given some prominence to the unrest in the north, as our Washington correspondent Mark Little reports.
The big picture from Mars. The robot rover.
On last night's CBS News, Mars was the hot topic, followed closely by scenes from another far-off world.
No end to the sea of troubles in Northern Ireland, the aftermath of another bloody Sunday.
By its very nature, hundreds of years of conflict is hard to explain in sound bites on network news, and what Americans saw and heard last night was a fearful mix of mayhem and chaos.
Irish Catholics went on a rampage today in British-ruled Northern Ireland, attacking
gasoline
British
bombs
police
and homemade hand grenades being hurled at police, hijacked cars set alight, and shots fired.
Daybreak showed the scars left by the night of violence. Protestant politicians blamed the outlawed Irish Republican Army for orchestrating.
The American government had urged both sides in Northern Ireland to remain calm during the marching season. President Clinton made that appeal last Thursday.
These marches are a regular thing. If it happens, there are marches and there are marches. We all know that. So I hope that we can, whatever happens, it won't be an occasion for further violence.
Yesterday, the president was in Madrid at the NATO summit, where he said he was deeply saddened by the spectacle of violence in Northern Ireland. Back in Washington, the State Department echoed his appeals for calm.
Well, the United States was deeply concerned, deeply saddened by the confrontations that took place once again in Northern Ireland.
Some Irish Americans say it's up to the British government to take the next step. Congressman Joe Kennedy wants Tony Blair to ban orange marches through disputed areas. But the US government has refused to criticise the British government for its decision to allow the Orangemen march down the Garvaghey Road.
But we are not going to second-guess the decision of the British authorities and the Royal Ulster Constabulary to allow the parade That decision was made on security grounds. It was a very difficult decision, as you know. The British government and the Royal Ulster Constabulary believe that perhaps by making this decision, they might even limit the violence.
While the marching season continues, the United States government can do little but look on with growing concern. But President Clinton hasn't given up hope and is expected to make another appeal to political leaders in Northern Ireland to save what's left of the peace process before it's too late.
The British Prime Minister Tony Blair has backed Mo Mowlam's handling of the Orange Order march down the Garvaghey Road. Speaking in Madrid, where he too is attending the NATO summit, Mr Blair said his government was determined to push ahead with the peace process.
Well, I have absolutely no doubt that everybody in Northern Ireland, and indeed in Britain, is appalled at the violence that has broken out and wants to see this process move forward. And we're going to move it forward, I can tell you that. But I have equally no doubt at all that Mo Mowlam took the right decision in the interests of public safety. And we've got to focus on the broader political settlement, because that is a process that should still go on. And so far as the government's concerned, we're going to carry on finding a way through.
The Duns Tribunal was adjourned